And welcome to day 2 of our budget deliberations. So we're just carry on with the capital budget. We finished off yesterday with Ag Services and Fleet in the afternoon. So we'll start this morning with the Public Works capital budget. And I'll turn it over to Rick and Devin.
That was it.
Jen, you didn't want to say about the streaming? Oh,
Sorry, just one more comment. I did take a look at the budget deliberation streaming, and we had over 60 views since yesterday afternoon. And there was one positive comment, just thought it was a really good idea. So, just with regards to streaming, I just said good idea, or I can't remember exactly what the words were. So, yeah, they can watch anytime. They don't have to watch it live. So,
Only one comment?
only one, and it was good.
what was it? What was the comment?
Just a good idea. I heard something along those lines.
Okay. I think one of our last videos, we had like 75 people watching, and then another 130 watched out.
Oh, okay.
We're watching.
Yeah.
Okay, good morning, council.
Yeah, very careful. Shows my hair. Good morning.
Okay, if you'd like to turn to page 81, we'll start with Public Works 2019, or I guess this is the summary page for Public Works for the 2019. Okay. Does anybody have any questions from yesterday that they'd like to bring up today that we didn't bring up yesterday or kind of thought about last night? Okay. So on page 81, we look at the proposed 2019 budget. Under revenues, you can see a vast majority comes from grants. And then if you look at expenditures, a vast majority is going to our road projects for a total of $3.595 million for 2019. Then on page 85, go through each individual project. And I can bring up GIS in just a second here. So the first one is calcium base stabilization, 10 miles. It's a continuation of our base stabilization project. Council has identified 30 miles, actually I think that's increased now. 32 miles. After your last report. 34 miles, sorry, for future consideration. So we're proposing to do 10 miles of those 34 miles next year at a cost of 1.32 million.
Okay, Devin, just a question. So you had 1.32 with the 30 miles, so will that amount change obviously with 34? No?
For just the 10 miles, it'll stay the same. Yeah. Overall, if we do 34 miles, yes, it'll increase. Yeah, absolutely.
No,
sorry.
we're doing 10 miles.
Yeah.
Yeah, 10 miles.
For 1.32 million.
34
Yes.
is for future consideration.
That's
Yes.
the whole
24,
list.
right.
So of those 10 miles will come out of what is approved in the policy based on priority. So,
So we're gonna do 10 miles in 2019?
that's what we're suggesting.
That's the request, right?
Yes,
Okay.
correct, yeah.
But that's still, yeah, okay.
Thank you, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, I just wanted to.
Thank you. Your funding source, the MSI Capital Grant, can you just maybe speak a little bit to how that works? Like, so say you've identified this project, you've said that's the funding source. If there was a change and this project were to not go forward, or another project, maybe of higher priority, were to be selected, how does that work with the grant funding? Do you then have to reapply, or once you have that funding, then you're allowed to allocate that as you see fit? How does that work?
I believe you can reallocate.
Yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Campbell. So with the MSI grant, we don't actually apply for the funding until we get approval in the budget. then Amelia would apply for the grant approval. Once it's been allocated to that project, you can reallocate it to another one. You just have to submit another application. It's pretty easy to get funding through the MSI. They just want to know what you're doing with the money. But yeah, if something came up, we could cancel this and reallocate, reapply.
You know the total allotment, or however you word that, I guess. You're approved for X amount, and then you're selecting projects under that amount?
That's right, yeah, we get,
We estimate it based on the previous years. We don't know even if we'll get anything in 2019 at this point. So we assume, based on history, that we will, and we just estimate it on what we received in 2018 and then moving forward. So,
Yeah, thank you.
There is also the factor through RMA, we found out at the conference too, and I know you know this too, that the MSI is going to be replaced with another source of funding. There should be some announcement, I think, probably early in the new year on that too, so we'll have to take that into consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, based on history, is that a lot of the budget is based on that, like the budget from the year after? Because what I heard, a lot of times they just go on what was done before.
well, sorry, through to Councillor Vanderveen, we do base it on last year's amount, but it's also announced in the province's budget. They tell you what's going to be allocated. The MSI program had a total allotment to be allocated over so many years, so we can go off of that as well. But every year they do make changes to the program, up or down, so we use the last year's figure as the most, relevant to our program, but not going beyond what they said they are going to allocate.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This morning, there was something in the news that the change is in the works, but of course they're looking at the county and Edmonton and see how they would like to see it structured, but it looks like the change is gonna come. And one of the big changes is, if the province does good, then the municipality is gonna be able to take advantage of that. But if it is not doing good, but it's happening now, then we're gonna be way down in, or not, I shouldn't say way down, but we're gonna be down in funding too.
On this project, we had 6 or 8 miles connecting the north end of the city to 845. Kind of more or less for Cavendish, is sort of what it looks like, or other loads coming out of the city. Will we have discussions with the city or with Cavendish on potentially funding part of this project, or? Okay.
We have December 10th, we have meetings set up with the city to talk about ICF, but one of the big ticket items is that road. So they've agreed to have some conversations with us. They have tentatively agreed that there should be some cost sharings, but we haven't got the details worked out yet.
That's the one that goes right straight to the 43 there.
Yeah, it's a high priority for us. Probably that 8 miles would be the highest priority on the list right now. And it goes 1 mile west of 43rd.
To the dump road.
Yeah, it's dump.
Yeah. Yeah, all the way to 845.
Right across, or up above the meat planting ground, right? Yeah, that's what Cass's feet on.
Yeah. And what we do anticipate, that's gonna be the main cut across for a lot of the potatoes in the future. And you've got peat hulls that go there and Casco's feedlot.
We did put in a request. I know we had a previous presentation to council from the sugar beet growers. We've put in a request for the Potato Growers Association to come and present to council too, just so we can get some more background on where they're coming from, what pieces of infrastructure they're using, and just some more background. But we haven't heard a response yet.
So who do you hoping to get a response from the Sugar Beet Growers Association?
No, I just mentioned that we had a request from a member of council if the potato growers could come and give a presentation similar to what the Sugar Beet Association came, Councillor Zeenstra.
Yeah, I realize that, the tough part on that one is the sugar beets and also the potatoes that are in the rotation, so you never know exactly where the bulk of it is gonna be, and that could fluctuate quite a bit.
Is there any more questions on that project? Okay, so moving on to the next one. I'll bring it up on GIS here. This is Sunset Acres Mill and Inlay. It's just west of the city. Oh, sorry, to the south here. Right here. I'll zoom in. So this includes the reconstruction of the internal roads within Sunset Acres. So that cul-de-sac there, this one here, and that one right there. The existing road, initially this project has been in the budget for a few years, and I anticipated a mill and inlay. I looked at the condition of the road this summer, and it is past a mill and inlay. It's gone to now full reconstruction. I can tell that the subgrade is deteriorating, and if you do a mill and inlay, we're just gonna have failures because the clay underneath isn't any good anymore. So I revised the project. I've split it into two, so it's not such a financial burden for each to do it all at once. And I want to reconstruct those 3 cul-de-sacs next year, and then you'll see in subsequent years this main north-south road in as well for a reconstruction.
And you're gonna have a bike path on there?
That's something we're gonna look at to see if we can fit in a pedestrian walkway
Yeah.
along this north-south road, yeah. We'll see what we can do within the existing right-of-way. That's something that'll come in the preliminary design phase, and see if the engineers can make
The
it.
playground right at the bottom.
Pardon me?
Isn't the playground right at the bottom there?
Let's see, right here is the playground, yeah. And that, I'll just draw your attention, we do propose a 10% local improvement tax on this project, split over 22 lots, which is approximately $3,772 total per lot. If they choose to pay it over 20 years, it's $188 a year on their taxes.
Thank you. It's the internal roads that are the worst in that area, aren't they?
They are, yeah. The north-south definitely has, you can tell the subgrade is failing on there as well, but not as bad as the interior roads.
The interior's been going bad in the last half dozen or more years, right?
Yeah, and I really noticed this past year that there's a lot more subgrade failures for whatever reasons, so.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, all the residents there have agreed to the 10% increase? That still has to happen?
That, yes.
First step is approval by council for the project.
Yeah, so this is would be a county-initiated local improvement versus a citizen-initiated local improvement, so the process is slightly different. But I think Larry is probably the most up on those type of things, but what it is, we would just notify, council would have to pass a bylaw, a local improvement bylaw, and they would be given the chance to disagree with the project, and then council has to make their decision based on those public meetings.
Yeah, so that one, they would come to the public meeting.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
So on the next page, we have Stewart Siding Industrial Park base and pave. I'll just zoom there on my GIS.
Morning.
So on the screen is the Stewart Siding Industrial Park. This is a continuation of what we did in 2016. In 2016, I had Tall Strip come in and pave Stewart Avenue and Trackside Drive all the way up to the corner here. And this segment right here, Cox and this portion of Ponderosa was already paved. So there is still some gravel portions remaining, and this project would complete the entirety of the business park to the same standard that we paved in 2016. And this is funded through MSI Capital for $560,000.
I'll ask a question. Yeah, thank you, whoever, Mr. Chairman. And I remember we brought that up a couple of years ago when we toured that area. Some of us councillors were quite surprised of the shape that steel siding was, and that's when we got the move on the horn and we said, hey, we gotta do something. If you expect business to come here, you know, we gotta do some improvements. And we did the improvements, and I believe, I'm not sure, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but some businesses did come after that.
Yeah.
So it's still, Martin is not here, but I think there's still some more people looking to come that way now since we made that improvement. And so it's maybe a good idea to do the rest of it.
You said on the north part of it, it went all the way around that circle?
This curve, yes,
Yeah.
it stopped right there. Where my hand is.
When was that done?
2016.
We'd like to continue that around to the end. It falls in line with your strategic plan for the industrial areas and managed growth. So we can have lots available for people when they need them with paved access in industrial areas.
So while you're doing that, why would you look at opening that road that goes to the north there? From the end of where your proposed paving is? Right there. It's a very bizarre story.
Okay.
It's something we haven't looked at, but absolutely we can look at that.
The guy who has the piece of land, the old dairy there, your cousin, owns actually half the right of way now, because for some reason the county sold it to him. That's quite a lot of it.
Oh,
it's
a
long
10 meter
time.
right away. Yeah. It's only 10 meters here, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That makes it
So
extremely.
it is for sale. If he does sell it, we should take that right away back.
Okay. Sorry, which portion is for sale? This lot? or
No,
this-
yeah, that one.
Okay.
Right there.
Yeah.
So,
And I think that's where right where the north driveway is there. I think that's where the wider right-of-way ends, isn't it? No. If you're coming to the south from there, that's where it narrows up.
It looks like it is 10 meters up until the curve. I can do another measurement here. Yeah, that segment's 10 meters right now.
Okay.
so would that be connected to the?
That piece does.
Can we go the other way?
Well, this is the portion for sale, this one is.
No, I know, but
Yeah,
That's 48.
you would have to jog around this.
Something like that.
Something we can definitely look into. Okay. Oh, yes, yeah, the grant funding source is MSI Capital for this one. Was there any more questions on this project?
So did you put those culverts in at the other end, where you get up there past, you coming south? So you come in on the main, whatever main one is, Stewart Drive or, yeah, those ones up at the end, on the very west end, right there. Because that's about where the pavement ends, right where your hand is.
Right.
So you said you were gonna change those culverts there and go under the road. Did we ever do that?
I don't recall that. Changing the culverts underneath the road?
Yeah, because you said there was no point in doing that because those needed to be changed originally when you wanted to do that.
I don't recall, but we'll definitely have
Okay.
the drainage guys look into it and make sure. Cause yeah, that whole right of way at the back there is the drainage way, it's not really meant to be a road, so.
There's no more questions? We move on to the next project?
So, what, for 19, you're just doing the one up to the top there?
No, it's, I'll try and show you the entire project. So this portion right here, it's hard to see anywhere where you see brown lines, that means gravel, the black lines mean asphalt. Anywhere where you see brown lines are gonna turn to asphalt basically. So all of Cox Drive, looping up to Stewart, so this entirety, Clark Ave, and this tail end of Trackside.
That's just about to all of
It'll do the entirety of the industrial park.
It's to that same standard that we did the other part. It's not the same as Roxburgh, but it's an industrial standard, it's not to that level.
So then another little part coming down there that it was paved by the developer, Cox.
Yeah.
Not that, over, sorry, right there.
Yes.
Does that need to have, that's only 2 inch, or 3 inches of hard top. Does that need to be?
I'd have to look at the core holes for that section of road and see what the thicknesses are, but yes, if it's only got 2 inches on, then while the contractor is there, it makes perfect sense to add another few inches on top of it. Steve?
So in 2016, we did have to do earthwork to get just paved, and same with this year, or next year.
That was at the time when we thought that a pulverized base prep and pave was the right option, because there was some old coal mix in there and stuff and the sub base did show that it can stand up. It was just the surface that was deteriorated, so we were able to pulverize, and it seems to be standing up. I think most of it was that water was getting trapped on the surface, and with that asphalt, it was shedding water.
Okay. The next project is the Broxburn Business Park overlay. So this is a continuation of what we completed last year. And this includes this southern leg of Broxburn Boulevard. And this little segment right here to the same standard that we did this northerly road last year. And that will bring the entire business park out of well, at least the northerly part is a seasonal ban, the southerly part is a permanent ban, so it'll bring the entire business park out of that permanent ban and just will be affected by seasonal road bans. And then we'll eliminate road use agreements in its entirety for that business park. And that one is funded through FGTF at $400,000.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you explain that seasonal road ban a little bit more, Devin or Rick, because it is basically, if it is local traffic but need to go there, but come from wherever, far away, whatever, if they slated to go to a certain business, but it's over that section, they can do so, I believe, right?
I believe with an agreement during a seasonal ban,
Yeah.
they still can, yes.
But how does that company go, certain company go about to get the permit?
I believe they just call our contribute office and they deal with Terry, I believe, and get an agreement in place.
Or Travis and Julie.
So wouldn't it be easier, that the businesses arrange for the permit if they know certain load's gonna come? Because for a trucking company, he could be sitting down there on the road for who knows how long down there before he gets the permit issued to him.
Yeah, but it's their responsibility before the load leaves to check their route to their destination and make sure, because the province has bans on all over the place as well. They shouldn't just assume that they can get right to their destination without permits. That trucking company or whoever's ordering the stuff should know the road bans in the area and get the appropriate permits. We advertise our road bans when the road bans go on. So, we do help where we can, where there's stranded loads and stuff, but it's not necessarily, somebody's job to make sure that every load coming into the county is permitted. If they get pulled over by the CPOs or the DOT or the RCMP, then they better have the right permits in place.
But that permit is only available from Monday till Friday. And on the weekend, you can't get it. And, you know, I know it's a bit of an issue for trucking companies. Like, they used to assume when they see, you know, that Roxburgh development, it's right off Highway 3, you know, they absolutely don't assume that there's a ban right there. They don't. I know exactly how. I used to do a lot of trucking myself, and I know what you're up against.
Yeah, I think most of that came from because of the fact we had to put permanent bans on there. I think during seasonal ban time, they're a lot more diligent in looking where the bans are. Because those permanent bans were on, it would be, say, middle of August when there's no bans on anywhere, and they look at an industrial park and they just assume there's no bans. That was where the issues were coming from. During seasonal ban time, and I've ordered a lot of stuff over the years, and I always tell them, make sure you're not getting stuck at without your proper permits. If you got an oversize or if you've got heavy loads, make sure, especially during seasonal ban time, that you're covered, because that load can get stopped and those fines are huge.
Yeah, well, the thing is, when you implement an industrial lockdown down there, for industry to come to the county, in my eyes, you know, it's absolutely ridiculous trying to ban that, because when you have a businesses, you gotta accept what type of loads they're gonna come in down there. You're gonna have to accept that year round and not just part of the year. And that is the problem. We discussed that last year or the year before, and I think that thing should be looked at, and has nothing to do maybe today with the budget, but it's gotta be looked at.
So to make it ban-free, when we brought that report forward to do the overlay, we were, at the time, I think it was about 1.2 or 1.4 million to do the whole project as an overlay. And to do it to full ban-free status was about $4 million. So there's a big difference in the cost. So what we have to do, we have to protect that road with a seasonal ban. What we did was get it out of that annual, the full ban status by doing the overlay, so that 10 months of the year, there's no bans on there. That was the investment that we made.
Well, I can argue we're all blue in the face, but I don't agree with that. I look at it, you know, if we have an industrial site down there, it should be ban-free year-round, and if the road is not at the condition that it can take, well, we have to accept that.
So just to follow up on what Morris said then, if you were to put 2 more inches of pavement on, would that change any perspective?
No, because we have to do subgrade, upgrade the subgrade to.
And adding more asphalt, it does create a thicker surface, but then you lose width. The more you add on, the less.
The narrower you get.
The narrower you get, yeah. And that's kind of the problem we faced last year with this project, when we looked at some of the options you know, do we core it out, do we widen out the road, or do we do an overlay, which was our most economical option to get us out of that permanent ban state.
Go ahead, Todd.
I think Morris has got a real good point there, but if that's gonna cost us that much money, when we do a project like that, when the people are buying the industrial lots and so forth, if we calculate that in there, that they would be able to have a ban-free area that they're in, then we would have to, from the start, let them know that, you know, it's gonna be a little bit more expensive than they did right now. Would that change? Would that keep people out of the county? I mean, how is that in other areas of the MDs and counties?
Well, I'll answer that for you. The problem there is, we signed off on the project, or the county signed off too early on it, and it wasn't up to standard. So we accepted it as it was built, when we shouldn't have.
Yeah, and we, oh, sorry.
Going forward, any new industrial park, we're gonna have the higher standard of non-ban, like the Chinook and everything.
And just, engineers used to design what they would call a ban-free road. Engineers won't call it a ban-free road anymore, they'll call it a 20-year life cycle on that road. Because they can't predict weather patterns, they can't say, this road is never gonna fail under ban-free circumstances. So we can't even get an engineer to say it's gonna be ban-free. They'll design it to an industrial standard, they'll model certain traffic conditions and ensure that the structure is adequate for that, but they won't say this is a ban-free road. It's a 20-year or 30, typically 20-year road, and design the structure accordingly for the traffic.
Okay, at least similar to what you'd see in the city, I guess.
Exactly, yes, yeah. And just to touch on that, we're getting our engineering guidelines revised, and one thing I'm including in there is set standards for an industrial park or residential, and they're gonna very much mimic what the city has in place right now.
Okay, sounds good.
Any more questions on Roxburgh?
And just, if we were considering not banning that, we would be very quickly back to where we were before we did the overlay. During those seasons, if you start getting cracking and alligator cracking in the road, that's where we were with, and we were spending about $300,000 a year in patching in the Roxburgh area, just doing patches just to keep it going. Those patches would blow up, and then we'd go back and do it again. And the patches just seem to keep growing and growing. So it was a very good investment to make, and we got rid of the annual ban.
Go ahead, Morris.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. How much is the permit? To buy the permit, and then you can go on it.
It depends on the, that permit is through Travis MJ. So that's the provincial body that issues those permits. I don't know, $300 or $400 sometimes, depending on how big or how heavy your load. No, that's each load.
If I may, I don't think that's what Morris meant. I think he meant, can you buy a permit to go overweight?
From us?
Yeah,
No.
is that what you meant?
Well, no, you can, you know, when I give a loaded truck does come to the Roxburgh down there, and he has to go into that small portion of Band Road, he could buy a permit, and he does not need to unload it then. But I believe that permit is not even $300. And then if it is $300, does that $300 would come to the county then?
A portion of that comes to us. I think they take a 15% charge. That was the agreement we signed last year. I brought it to you guys for overweight and oversized loads, if you recall. We had to create a bylaw that allowed Travis MJ to do that for us.
15% is administration and the rest comes.
Yeah. I don't know the rates per load or what it is, but it keeps the people honest is what it does.
I bet I'll say it.
The next project is Range Road 21-4, Mill and Inlay. That is the road that leads to the picture view office. I'll just bring it up here. So it's this short segment of asphalt road right there. It's showing signs, the asphalt is showing signs of deterioration. It's got some cracking and it's past its life cycle, but it hasn't affected the subgrade yet, so we're at a point where we should replace the asphalt before it gets to a point where it deteriorates so much that the water starts infiltrating that subgrade and then we need reconstruction on that segment of road. So we're proposing a mill and inlay for $250,000 through the MSI capital grant.
That's a county road, right?
Correct.
Yeah, it would give us access to our shop on a proper road, and we have a lot of traffic on there, so it makes a lot of sense right now not to let that road blow up.
So you have to take the top off and redo the whole thing.
Just a mill and inlay.
Okay.
Yeah, you kind of grind a bit at the top of the asphalt and then a new layer on top. Any other questions?
Marsh? Yeah, I do agree with that. That's an awfully busy road because the county alone, you know, a lot of traffic back and forth, but there's also a trucking company down the road there. I think he operates more than a dozen trucks. And then we also have the feedlot on the end of the road down there. And also a gentleman down there. But there's a lot of custom farming and he runs a lot of trucks also. So that it's an unbelievable busy road. However, we only gonna, what is that, about 400 feet? We're gonna do probably,
About 500 meters, half a kilometer.
oh, it's not far.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the asphalt ends, if you can kind of see where my mouse is on the screen, just at the south end of the county's lot there. Is there any more questions? Okay, we can move on to the next one. Page 87, Riverbrink Estates Base and Pave. We'll bring that up on the map if you're not familiar where that's located.
You guys
Not this last one.
No, we weren't there.
Yeah, we did our paving tour. That might have been just before budget last year. So you guys may not have been on council yet. You remember the paving, we did the paving tour? Yeah, we went in there.
But anyway, it's, yeah, it's all broken up.
Yeah, it's well beyond its life cycle. We can't just do an overlay or a mill and inlay there. It needs to be reconstructed. So I'll kind of draw your attention to the funding source again. We are proposing a 10% local improvement. The total project is $170,000. There are 8 lots in that subdivision that would pay into the local improvement $2,125 total, or $212 annually over 10 years. And with the remainder being funded through MSI Capital at $153,000.
Plus? Thank you, Richard. But that subdivision hasn't been there longer than about 15 years, has it?
Oh, it's been there for a long time.
Longer than that?
That's why you.
Again, it's a road that was built below a standard we would allow to be built today. I think it was in the 80s, it's probably,
Yeah.
based on looking at the houses, was probably early to mid 80s sometime. Looking at the facade of the buildings. Well, yeah, there was a time when we're not sure that the standards were at the right
Morris? Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to put this maybe on the board under the parking lot. The proposal I would like to come up with is if we cut down on the 10 miles of haul road for next year and fix up Roxburn and Stewart siding all together, do the right job and fix it all together and maybe put all of the 10 miles or some of the 10 miles for future. So put that on the parking lot. I think that would make more sense to me to do the one and fix it all up and have it ready to go.
Just so you're aware, none of the projects we've listed so far are listed as unfunded.
Yeah.
So typically, if we had an unfunded project that was a higher priority for council, that's when we would get into those discussions. But if you guys just want to cut and save funding for the following year for something else, then that we haven't suggested, then we basically balance all these projects so they fit in the funding that we have anticipated and what we have carried over from last year. So if that makes sense.
If you were, sorry, if you were gonna do the Broxburn up to the standard that Councillor Seabstra was suggesting, what would the cost be, or we?
About $4 million.
Oh, thank you.
That was the quote that we got, plus it would be eliminating the $1 million that we put in last year. So total cost would end up being more, because we did invest in that road already to bring it to a higher standard than it was.
Any questions on Riverbrink?
So just, you can see the trend that we're going in those type of, where the development wasn't necessarily up to speed. Sunset Acres, this one, it's kind of a trend. We're looking at creating that 10% that the residents would pay on virtually all those projects going forward, just to have some local input into those projects instead of just being totally borne by the county.
Go ahead, Gary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like you said, we have kind of a bit of a trend here with the Sunset and the Riverbrink. Just with the number of subdivisions that were done in this era in the county, is this a trend that we're going to see going forward? Then are we just kind of scratching the surface now, so to speak, or how far along would you say we are in that process? Obviously, we're playing catch up, but where would you say we're at?
That's a tough question.
Over the past few years, we've definitely been playing catch up on some of our poor roads. I expect to see maybe one of these every year kind of come along until we finally catch up. We don't want to bring 10 at once and just do a bunch of paving jobs and subdivisions, but we want to slowly chip away at them. And when you do it that way, you spread it out. At least when they come up for renewal, it's not all at once, kind of like our bridges. You spread it out, so when it comes up for renewal, it's spread out again when you repave those or do rehabilitation.
Yeah, I think Sunset is put back to the 60s. And same with Brink up in that area. That's why the road is, we have it.
Boss?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, we're playing catch up, but we have all these subdivisions there that have paved roads, but not up to standards. So what we're doing as maintenance is patching, I assume. And what kind of a cost do we have there? Any idea?
For patching? in this particular subdivision.
Yeah, for example.
I don't know if we've done a whole lot of patching in there. We've done a lot on that River Ridge Road and crack filling and what was that product we put on this year?
Well, that's still gravel up there, you know?
Well, so further up. And our total budget is about 500,000 a year we spend patching in that range. And most of it is on the busier, heavy roads. We don't do a whole lot in the subdivisions. You got like Vista Meadows had some major patching done. And the roads leading in there, they were kind of substandard. It wasn't proper drainage put in. A lot of it seems like a futile effort because if you don't do the underground work, your patch is just gonna blow up in 2 years again. And with something like this, if we start patching that, like Debbie said, it's beyond that stage of an overlay or mill and inlay or patching. And we'll just be spending the money year after year, and the patch is just, instead of being a 10-meter patch, next year is a 15-meter patch, and the next year is a 20-meter patch. And it just makes sense to spend 170 instead of 20 to 30 grand a year going in there year after year. Now, one thing that we have to remember is pavement has a life expectancy. Typical design on pavement structures is 20 years. So even though if something was built to a standard today, 20 years from now, the likelihood that it has to be replaced or something has to be done with it, there is investment that has to be in there. So just because you pave it doesn't mean it's done forever. There are a lot that last, like Sundial Road. I mean, that was paved before Morris was born, maybe. I don't know. Be the dark ages.
Did they have pavement back then? Sorry.
No, but anyway, those are the things we gotta keep in mind, that it's not a fix forever. It's something that is fixed for 20-year design.
So the percentage of matching budget for subdivisions would be like less than 1%.
Of that total, yeah, well, like Vista Meadows was a big one where the big massive, so you can get a big blow up in a lot of times it's because of poor drainage that was put in.
In these subdivisions, they don't have any heavy traffic, and well, Sunset is on that one road, and the guy that's down there right at the end, like, other than that, it's just cars.
Yeah, that's exactly why that distance is only 170,000, because it's to a residential standard, not to an industrial standard.
Yeah, because nobody's on there.
If you are concerned about it, you can always be. Right.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to put something else on there on the parking lot down there, so for you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe put on the ventures. Because I think that's going to be maybe some part of the discussion coming up.
Just for clarification, Councillor Zeenstra, did you want us to bring back some information on debentures? Morris?
Oh, I thought it was you talking.
Yeah, no. She's looking at her like, why are her lips not moving? Did you want some specific information on debentures, just so we can prepare that for council?
Yeah, but I'm looking at down there, some of the things, it's maybe, gonna be, too much for the type of budget we gonna be able to approve, but certain things maybe we should go ahead and what I would like to see maybe, is it a possibility we take out the debenture and get it done, and you pay it off over 5, 10, 15, or 20 years.
For example, Broxford Business Park, complete it all and then see how that would play out with the
Exactly,
venue. Okay.
because that piecemealing to me, that absolutely don't sit right with me.
Okay, we'll get that for you.
Okay. Okay, the next one is the fleet building bathroom renovation. I don't have any photos, but on the road tour, some of you got to see the fabulous mechanics bathroom and the state of disrepair it's in. So we'd like to do a renovation to that bathroom on the main floor, which includes a shower in there as well, and then the smaller bathroom on the second floor for a total of $40,000 through the fleet reserve.
So you call that a bath and a half?
Did everybody see it except that? She chose to.
I had seen it previously, so I'm well aware of both.
Well, you walk in there and you're not sure if your shower is gonna come from upstairs or from in the shower.
I like horrible.
Any questions?
The next one is a concrete inspection and wash pad for heavy equipment at the Picture View shop, and I'll just show where it's going to be located here. So this is the fleet building, and we want to put a wash pad right about in this area. And it's going to allow the mechanics to do some basic maintenance on their equipment outside of the fleet building, and as well, the operators, sorry. And it's a place for them to wash their equipment off as well. And we're looking at partnering with Goldridge and putting roller compacted concrete in there. And that's at a cost of $25,000 through the Public Works Reserve.
That does include some, like running the wash lines and compressor lines to have air out there and water, pressurized water and lighting. A lot of what happens now is they have to, on the gravel, whatever vehicle that they're inspecting, a lot of it, they have to crawl underneath it and stuff. They're doing it in the gravel or on the snow that's going to get cleaned and washed down.
So you mentioned the water lines and the lighting, 25,000 will cover all.
Yeah, that's included in that.
Summer use.
Well, it can be kept clean, so it's a hard surface that can be plowed off.
Yeah.
So there would be, sometimes they would use it in winter.
It's not covered.
No, it's just a pad.
You're more familiar with the roller compacted concrete than I am, but it's like concrete. It has a solid surface that water won't penetrate, I guess.
Yeah, some of the counselors, they, when we were out at Goldridge a couple of weeks ago, Morris and Lauren got the opportunity to see the pad that they poured for, similar, it's like an apron around the building that they can park on or do what they want to do. It has a little bit of a rougher texture than typical concrete, but it, yeah, and with a little bit of slope, it'll drain very nicely and clean off well. Something, and it's, without the forming and the rebar, you're looking at about half the cost of a concrete pad.
That's stronger.
What's that?
And it is stronger, that's.
Well, the concrete component is stronger. Without the rebar, I think they become very similar.
There's no more questions. That's it for 2019 Public Works Capital. So for 2020, we have Township Road 9-4 overlay, which is the Kit Cutoff Road. Zoom to that here for you. It's just north of Colhurst, connects Highway 3 with Highway 25. Council had requested that we get a preliminary engineering report for this segment of road to see what it would cost to upgrade it. We got that report, and the report suggested it would cost approximately $1.67 million to do an overlay on the entirety of that road to bring it out of that permanent ban state and into a seasonal ban like the rest of our paved roads. That one is we're requesting it to be funded $670 through FGTF and $1 million through the Market Access Network Hardtop Reserve. Just a little bit of information for you. It will be slightly narrower than the existing road because we are doing an overlay. And if we wanted to maintain that width, the cost would probably be at least double because you'd have to core down the road and rebuild it again from the base up. Whereas we want to do an overlay and build on what's there to get that structure to bring it out of the permanent ban.
That one goes by the old truck wash there, right? 25.
The kid, from
Yeah, that
25
one.
to,
Yeah, the old truck wash, that was shut down.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, that.
Yeah, on the corner there.
So that will that be just the same as transportation? It won't be banded at all?
It'll be the same as their banned roads. Like AT's roads, they're secondary highways that get banned.
Okay, yeah.
It won't be like a number 2 or a number 3.
It's like 519.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's subject to seasonal ban.
So just a question on the market access network hardtop reserve. I'm not sure exactly how you arrived at that word. Like, are we not, we're putting money away for reserve for paving, but it's not necessarily from the market access. Is it the tax or the business tax?
That's what the whole program, yeah, that business tax is broken into 3 components. The bridge component, the hardtop component, and the haul route component.
So that $1 million, or what's in that reserve right now? Do we know what the amount is right now, Jen?
I believe it's around $1 million.
It's around $1 million?
It should be at $1 million after this year's transfer.
Yeah.
And then there'll be another 500,000 put in next year.
Yeah.
Steve?
I was just gonna say, there's 500,000 bridges, 500,000 hardtop roads, and the rest in the,
So there was, after we did the change, and there's another report coming up through the Funding Our Future update. There was $1 million going into bridges, 500,000 into the hardtop reserve. And because there was no component going into the haul roads, we've now, the report is coming forward to break that down into 500, 500, and 500. So, and that would cover a chunk of that debenture payment in the calcium roads.
Is the venture payment not about $750,000 a year?
Yeah.
So shouldn't all of it be paid, covered off by the business tax?
And that's a discussion that we can have when we get to that portion of the, in the Funding Our Future stuff. We do have more reports coming forward as part of this process to talk about how we're funding those different parts. And that's something that definitely has to be discussed. It may, what are we at, 250 ahead now? It may involve an increase to that if we wanted to keep the portions the same for bridges and hardtop.
It's a little different than what we sold it, but
Well, yeah, the what's happening right now and what happened last year is the efficiencies out of the haul route covered the debenture payment last year.
but the efficiencies were supposed to go towards the upgrade of some of the roads we've neglected for quite some time.
Right. And I certainly agree with what you're saying.
So just for clarification for me, because I wasn't here through the process, but, so the business tax and the money collected from that is going into this reserve account, correct? Is that what is, yes?
Portion of it.
right?
It's broken into the three different.
No, but there's one, oh, there's 3 reserves?
There's two, yeah, well, the third reason.
We set up 3 reserves in the first year. One was for the base stabilization, one was for bridges, and one was for the hardtop reserve. So with the business tax, we were collecting for all 3 of those purposes originally at the time before we did the 13 million. And we had some carry forward funds, either because bridge projects carried over to the next year and were completed. And so just to ensure that that money that was collected through business tax stayed where it was supposed to go, which was to bridges or hardtop services. So an annual transfer of 500,000 takes place and is part of the budget, which is collected from the business tax, and the other portion previously was $1 million for bridges. In the 2019 budget, we haven't gotten there yet, but we'll keep the $500,000 transfer for hardtop.
1.5 million. Per
Yeah,
bridge.
for a total of 1.5.
No,
So,
no, 2 million. 1.5 in bridges.
yeah.
0.5 into hardtop, and and that was the total that we collect now. It's just under 2 million in the business tax. This year, we're suggesting a different breakdown of that to have. We feel we only need $1 million in bridges now to keep up, because the cost of bridges has come down from what it was in 2014 when we first started. And we've caught up a little bit from where we were at. Not much, but we've caught up a little bit. Plus, we've had, there is STIP funding available now, so there is that ability to give us a little bit of room. We don't have a component of that business tax from last year's budget going into the haul routes. We use the efficiencies to cover that payment.
So I know Councillor Vanderveen has a question, but before, when you said there's $1 million in reserves, but you have 3 reserves, is that the total of the 3 reserves?
No, the $1 million was specifically for the hardtop that I was talking about.
So there's $1 million in the hardtop reserve, and how much in the bridge reserve?
I have to look at the bridge reserve.
Okay.
Here, not very much, and most of that is assigned. So it's to fund the bridges that got finished up this year. So it's just over $370,000. And then that was to finish up bridges.
And the $1 million was in the hardtop?
Yeah, so that was a $500,000 transfer for 2017 and a $500,000 transfer for 2018.
Okay. And then the third reserve?
Was the base stabilization. So in the first year where we collected there.
And how much is in that one, Jen?
Just over 250-some thousand, I believe.
Okay. Sorry, Claus. I just wanted-
250.
My question would be, I think it's really important that we, the business tax, that we use it for what we sold to the people that are paying into it, and I think it's really important. So but what you're saying here, through the efficiencies that we have, through what we've done with the roads, that is going into this reserve. Am I correct?
No, that's going into things like being able to deploy equipment to other roads, like we talked about yesterday. You asked what was happening with, we're reducing the amount of graders. Yeah, we're reducing the total, but we reduced the effort on those roads more than what we reduced the grader beats. So those guys are able to focus on providing the services necessary on those secondary roads in the county that are outside of the haul roads. Those type of things are services that we've increased to be able to provide. Other stuff that comes out of that is like the hardtop reserve and the bridges were crucial, because we had bridges that aren't necessarily on haul roads that had to be replaced, like the one that's coming up next year is not a haul road. And ones that we've done in the last couple of years are not necessarily on haul roads. So there's that whole discussion where that money came from, and we had sold it saying that we could save $1 million a year from the budget, which we've shown that in the efficiencies. Now, it's where that debenture payment comes from is that a business tax debenture payment, or is it through the public works budget? And in my opinion, it should be coming from the business tax, the way we sold it to the public.
Yeah, that was my point. Just make sure you keep that in place, what you sold, or what was sold to the public and then, or the people that are paying the business tax. Because I think that, and don't make it too confusing that people are going to be asking a lot of questions where is being used for other things. Because I think that's out there, and we have to be very careful with that one.
So I'm gonna suggest we probably should park that discussion until we actually get to it.
Yeah.
Because, and I think that will kind of reflect on how we would look upon the rest of these two also, so.
Yep.
Just for council's information too, internally, because we've heard so loud and clear that one of the biggest concerns of the business tax was there was concerns that we were going to take the funding and use it for other things other than the intention. Internally, I'm working with Jen and Maddie, and we're trying to prepare like a one-page document that for the public to say, here's how much business tax we've collected and here's where it went, so they can see exactly where their dollars are going. But I do agree, I think we need to park this until we have more discussion.
Just without talking about the all roads, this project here is exactly what we had intended the hardtop reserve to go towards. Is an area that has potential for industrial. It shortens some routes for some of the agricultural operators in the area. It eliminates a permanent road ban that's on right now. The only check mark it doesn't have is using that money to access provincial funding, which was one thing that we had hoped to be able to do with it. The impression we're getting is there's going to be no hardtop funding for these type of roads, for our type of roads anywhere in the near future. So we're looking at spending hundreds of dollars of our own to do these type of upgrades and get rid of those annual bans.
If we want to leave this in the budget, then perhaps we can leave it in the budget, just take out market access and just say the funding is to be determined. Can we do that, Jen? Or not?
Wouldn't we be better just leave it where it is for the moment? Can we have that discussion about how this is gonna kind of
Okay.
come out? Okay, move on to Shaughnessy then.
All right.
Has nothing to do with that. I hope.
No.
I'm just gonna bring up a drawing here. So this next project is Shaughnessy Phase 4. I apologize, it's a little bit out of order. Utilities has Phase 3 in it, but we're doing Public Works first, so we'll skip into Phase 4. This phase includes some road and sidewalk improvements within Shaughnessy, and the replacement of 2 transfer structures in our lagoons and a segment of sanitary pipe. We're looking at a total cost of $750,000. We've got MSI and FGTF funding $393,000, $323,000, and then a 10% local improvement tax on the sewer and lagoon costs only, because that is the only portion of the project that we can apply a local improvement, because that benefits the entire community. We can't apply the road to the entire hamlet because it doesn't benefit everybody. So we've applied it to the sewer and lagoon, which is a total of $33,680. And if you look at the TV here, that red line is the road work proposed. There's a little yellow line there, it's hard to see. I can't see my mouse either. That's some sidewalk work. Then up at the top, the green indicates the transfer structures and sanitary line that need to be replaced.
Green line, I can't see your hand.
Sorry, see if I can zoom in.
Up by number 2 there.
Oh, I see where it is. Okay.
There we go. Sorry
Which
about
street
that.
is that?
Yeah, that's the outfall line from the street.
The street, I believe, is First. Yes, First Street. And there you can kind of.
What we can do is bring a report, because we're 3 phases deep into this project now, and we can show you what's been done and what's remaining. I think it was a 10-year plan we put in.
20-year
Or
plan.
20. It was 10, and I think we bumped it because of the dollar values. But what we'll do is we'll bring forward an update report on that whole thing in the coming months, and show you guys exactly what we've done, what the benefits are, and there's a bunch of work happening right now on this phase 3.
Phase 2.
Yeah.
So just a question then, local improvement taxes, are they payable over a period of years? And like how much would it, I mean, 33,000, say, how much would that work out per household, or do you have those numbers yet?
Did you have that?
So it depends on the bylaw, of course, and if we borrow against to fund this in the interim. So it could be 10 years, 20 years, depending on what you'd want for the bylaw, but I thought we had,
Yeah.
So 33,000 is probably fairly minimal, but.
It was about 30 bucks a year, I think, per person.
yeah.
If that, even.
$30.
Population was 400, right? Well, that's got nothing to do with people paying tax, I guess.
This is Sean's.
Yeah, it's the total assessed value.
Yeah.
Or total number of lots, I think we broke it down.
Yeah.
I think for the other Shaughnessy ones, we were basing it over a 20-year period, just sort of so as the projects were moving forward over the years, it wasn't going to be such a huge total revenue, so.
This one, you'll notice it's only on the sewer and water portion. On the hamlets, that's sort of the way it's been done before, is a little bit different than the country residential. The country residential is the 10% is for the road work. In the hamlets, we're looking at having the 10% just on the sewer and water portion of those projects. And that's similar to what happened in Monarch several years ago.
Because country residents, they have their own fields anyway.
Well, it's a little bit different. The hamlets are they've been around a long time. Those are private developments, basically, those residential subdivisions.
So basically, we inherited them.
Well, hamlets are available for government funding, I think.
That too.
So, and which doesn't happen that often anymore, but unless you're Strathcona.
They're a different animal in dealing with.
Okay.
All right, and then the last one on page 92 is again base stabilization 5 miles. Just completing the roads that council identified for future consideration, and we've got 730,000 allocated through MSI capital.
Is that again 34 instead of 30?
The total is 34, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Or whichever.
Off the chip. And that's it for 2020. Is there any questions on 2020 Public Works?
So, I guess just one question, doesn't necessarily reflect 2020, but when do we gonna have the discussion about, when do we realize the costs of keeping up with what we have done, and how we're gonna average that out and know whether this is a project we wanna keep moving forward with?
Well, the budget this year is going to show you a number that we would have been looking at astronomical increases had we not done the program. The cut in gravel and the cut in reconditioning and the cut in grading time would all have been included in that. So when we talked about the efficiencies in that spreadsheet you guys saw in my report last week, I think maybe part of it is in here. And part of that other discussion with funding our futures program. Those efficiencies are being realized today in the amount of next to $1 million cut from the budget.
Yeah, I guess, but the only thing is we really don't have a handle yet on what the maintenance costs are gonna be.
We have a good idea. We've gone through some pretty severe years, I think as the maintenance is getting done year after year, it's gonna become somewhat less onerous to get it done yearly because of our maintenance efforts seem to be on the areas that we might have had some segregation during construction, or like we talked about yesterday, is doing those little pieces with mag chloride, which seems to hold up a little bit better versus the calcium in those turning movements and stuff like that. So we're gonna learn as we go. If council wishes, we can put the future consideration roads on hold for a couple of years till we have some more data. But like I said, we're in our infancy. We're doing as much tracking and monitoring of the efforts that we're putting in right now. Yes, the maintenance costs were more per mile than we originally anticipated. We did go through 2 of the driest years that we could likely see here. It may get worse, but we have to base our information on averages is what we do. Our budget is based on averages. Our engineers work on averages. We did increase the maintenance by about $1,000 a mile, so by about 50%. But that is still covered in that efficiencies, and we're still showing that we've cut the budget by an extra $1 million. The total road maintenance budget.
So with that, if I may, Mr. Chairman, thank you. But anyway, so you're saying it's about $1,000 a mile on the haul roads that we got in place now. So we got about close to 140 miles in place, so that's going to be 140,000. However, the savings is about $1 million.
So just to keep it, what it is we bumped it up to, I think it's 560-some thousand. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for the maintenance, it was
Oh, for the maintenance, I think it was
3,000 times 138.
it's 440.
Okay, so we bumped it up to 414,000 to maintain those 138 miles. And what we're saying is that the total to maintain those 138 miles, those specific 138 miles, was about 1.4 million. And now it's only costing us 400. Well, it's more than that because of the 6-year. But or it was 1.7 million. I'm trying to come up with numbers here that are probably on
We
the
have
sheet.
an annual transfer of 560,000 to the reserve for the 6-year maintenance program, right?
Yeah.
And then we have the
414.
414 for annual maintenance for 2019.
Yeah, so total expenses were 974,000. Total expenses per year to maintain those 138 miles. And what we're saying is that that was upwards of 1.8 or 1.9 million to maintain those specific miles. And then other savings come in from the excess grading time and stuff that is being able to be allocated to other roads. Those roads, those 138 miles cost us the bulk of our about 30% of our total budget to maintain, where they're only 10% of our road network, if that makes sense.
And just for some clarification, I just asked staff to pull up the resolutions and the reports through so we can see kind of a chronology of exactly what council decided before we go forward.
We're at 500,000 for maintenance on all the roads, 138 miles each year.
414 for the annual maintenance.
For 2019, starting in 2019?
Yes. And 500,000 $560,000 in the 6-year maintenance cycle.
$560 for a 6-year cycle.
Okay, flip to the back page of your budget. This is part of that future.
Very back.
Yeah. May as well talk about it now, I guess. This was part of my report last week to council. So, what we had originally proposed, if you go down to reduction of annual budget, and then it says expenses right underneath it. So the assumed gravel loss, bentonite and calcium replacement is $560,000 over a 6-year period. $560,000 a year for 6 years,
So that's a transfer to,
and that's going into a reserve. And then we had estimated $2,000 a mile at 134 miles at $268,000. For, that's the watering and general maintenance, pothole filling, those type of things. We've noted in the last couple of years, the miles that we have had completed with the dry weather, we felt that that number was underestimated, and we bumped it up to $3,000 a mile for 138 miles, bringing us to $414,000. So when you go through the numbers on the efficiencies.
Go ahead, Morris. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We looking at these numbers down here, and we all realize now, the maintenance and the cost of the haul roads was a little more money than we anticipated. But we gotta keep in mind what the purpose of the whole thing was. And I think we certainly met that purpose, because I seen some of the roads, and the one just next to my place, that's one of the busiest one, and we only banned it for 1 month. So the purpose of the whole thing was, to hopefully we can make a non-ban road.
1 week, Morris. 1 week.
Oh, 1 week, yes. And but the purpose of the whole thing is, that we had a good access roads for the businesses we have. And the businesses we have in our county is basically mainly it's the livestock industry, and that's where we were aiming at. And it's doing that. There is a bit more cost now, but I'm still pleased for what we're doing.
But just so you're aware, we increased that line item. When you're dealing with a budget, it's not just one line item that increases. We're saying that we're saving $73,000 a year more than what we originally proposed. Now, some of that, $380,000 of that shows up in grant funding, because we have the in-house reconditioning program that was grant funded, or a portion of it was, so the savings exceeded the tax portion. So part of that was $130,000 in funding coming through MSI into that operating budget. We have $999,000 a year come out of MSI into operating for the reconditioning program. So that's now down to $870,000, right?
reduced it by 130.
Yeah. And then the other part of it is the $250,000 in road reconstruction that we said, instead of doing 1 road a year at $1 million, we're gonna do 3 roads every 4 years at $1 million. Because of this, we don't have to reconstruct those roads as often. But you'll see when we go through capital that those projects have gone even further to 2 and 4. So we reduced it by half, but we didn't include that in here because we may get a project that comes up and we want to do an additional reconstruction, so we're not going to say that's, we left it at the 250. If you add all those numbers up, we end up with, like I said, $73,000 more than we originally proposed in that business plan we put forward.
So if I get the numbers correctly from you now, we're at 759 for annual savings. Not 905. Because you went from 268 to 414, right? So then that drop it to 759.
What's those 3, 5, 6? Yeah, just under 700,000 is what I'm getting, based on these numbers.
I didn't take out the 73 though.
No. Oh, you got, okay, yeah, with the 73 in there, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're still in that range of big savings.
So now it would be about 760,000.
Yeah, so one thing that you have to be aware of though is that these numbers include, we use 2015 numbers in 2016 to present this, or 16 and 7, no, we use 16 numbers in early 2017. And we went through cost of living increase twice, plus we had a 275 and a 375 increase, and whatever we're proposing to budget prudently for an increase this year in wages. So then we kept up with all of that as well. These numbers are this year's budget, projected budget for 2019.
Then could you just go back once more to the MSI funds you talked about? So that's only on beyond what we've already done for the stabilization program.
Yeah, so base stabilization was 1.4 million, which was 1.4 and change, which was 400,000 and change budgeted through our operating budget and tax support. And 999,000 was a transfer from MSI annually into operating. So that whole program was 1.4 million and change. When we, where we say efficiencies, reconditioning, we're projecting $536,000 in savings. We could only cut 400,000 out of operating because the rest of it was grant funded. So by reducing that further, it shows up as available MSI, not a reduction in tax support, if that makes sense. So that's why these are highlighted yellow. The two items that reduce funding to show up as available funding in other projects are the reconditioning and the reconstruction. And that gives us the ability to do other projects like River Brink or because of any MSI funded project.
I think where we're getting the water a little muddy here is we've got the business tax confused with the MSI. So somehow we kind of need to separate that out and get back to, so I think this doesn't cover what we did for the 134 miles.
This is the efficiency gain. So we said we would do a project that allowed us to provide a higher level of service, save money, and give a better experience for our citizens out in the county. Right, what we did. So the efficiencies that show up here allow us to give increased greater time on other areas other than just sending them to the haul roads all the time. It gives us the ability to do other projects with our MSI money that wasn't just going to those those particular roads. It gives us all those abilities to do, reduce dust control is a big one, that's $210,000. So cutting those programs that are a direct cost to the taxpayers, that's a big part of it. That comes out of the efficiencies. The business tax is how we pay for it.
Is there a sign up or is that?
To invest. In my opinion, that's what I thought that we talked about. How do we invest in these roads? Where does the money come from to do the investment? What the benefits are is for everybody.
Yes.
Right? And that's this program on this piece of paper, that's the picture that it's painting.
Bring back something that's, you know, can we bring back something, Jen, that just kind of shows?
Sorry, can we bring back something that just kind of shows how much we paid for the 138 without the grant funding in there? Can we do that, or is that?
I understand where you're coming
Yeah.
from. By doing this program, you've been able to free up more MSI dollars to go towards other projects. It's just, it kind of looks like we used MSI dollars along with business tax to make the roads originally.
No.
That's kind of what it looks like when you look at this paper.
I don't know, I see it from different eyes, I guess. I agree with what you're saying. There is some muddy waters there, but what is gained from doing the road? There was not one bit of MSI money that went into the investment at all. That was the borrowing bylaw that is yet to be determined where that money is, the overrun is coming from. That's a report on next Thursday.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we should put this in the parking lot, get some numbers on there and make, because it's really complicated the way we're talking to each other here. And I think that if we can come up with some simplified sheet where everything exactly goes, I think that we could understand it better.
If we redo the summary sheet, then based on the efficiencies that are in here, would you like us just to pull out that efficiency for the grant that we considered grant funding? And so it's just strictly based on the operating side of it?
Okay, this is the way I would look at it. If you look at the overall picture, if we would have continued on the way we were without the calcium stabilization program, we would have used the MSI dollars that you're saying in here, we would have, to maintain what we had. So without the base stabilization program, we're able to direct the MSI dollars towards other projects. It kind of almost, if you're not familiar with the numbers, it would look to me, just looking at it for the first time, that it was not only business tax dollars that made the roads calcium base stabilization, it was also MSI dollars. So you could kind of separate the two to make it just a little clearer. That's all I think the issue is. But I understand what you've done.
Yeah.
It's just from an outsider's view who doesn't have all that here, it would look a little different, I
Be
think.
able to explain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's easier to understand. Yeah, we can do that. Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Is that fair enough? To say that?
That's good. Let's have a break.
Not a chance. Okay.
So here's what I think. Here's what I think is, this is kind of, but this is what I'm.
We weren't yesterday, but it just depends on whether.